pranam and hello to all of you. The topic that we have chosen for today's spiritual meeting is existence, consciousness, bliss. It actually comes off the Sanskrit, famous scriptural Sanskrit statement, Sat Chit Ananta. Satya is truth, Chit is consciousness, and Ananta is bliss. So let us just look at, you see, what is meant by when we are talking about existence. You see, as I'm talking to you, we cannot take away the fact that everyone who is listening to this talk is conscious of whatever is being communicated. So when we talk about existence, we talk about the existence of consciousness. And the topic is existence, consciousness, bliss. So when we talk about bliss, then again, you see, you look at one thing that what we call as God or the Almighty or the reality is this very consciousness itself, which is ever present. It doesn't matter, you see, whether it's awake, dream, sleep state, whether you are in this physical form, you left the physical form and moved into another image, into another world. You see, if consciousness is not there, the image virtually becomes functionless. So bringing it more, you see, to a practical reality, as you are actually sitting there, you see that this view is in front of you, right? So you are conscious of the presence of the view, and the view is present at three levels. One is the physical level, right? The view is right in front of you and it is intuitively present. Now, everything related to the physicality of things, everything is there actually in this view. You see, the view seems to even touch space and time and even actually goes beyond that. So that is one view, but look at it. See, since we are conscious of the presence of the physical view, so this view is permeated everywhere, you see, by the presence of this ocean of consciousness. Then similarly, the view is also present at the level of feelings or the astral view. You see, we are conscious of our feelings only because of the presence, the existence, and that bliss of the presence of consciousness, right? Then we move on to the third level of this view, which is the mental view. Now, you see, mental view means the mental plane. You see, the mental body, the mental plane which is full of or constituting of nothing but thoughts. So here as well, the presence of consciousness is there, and the simple proof is that we are conscious of every single thought that flows in and out of this existence. So in truth, as has been taught by the great masters, from Jesus right through to Rishi Master Vyamsa Duno and my own guru, Sage Ramana. You see, Sage Ramana also had realized in his near-death experience that, when we had that experience, at the age of 16, as was discussed last time, that this body is actually dead, but he is still alive. And the realization was that the sage is none other than consciousness, and that is our true higher nature. The purpose of human birth is to realize that and to live in that true nature of ours, which is free of the coming and going of images. So this, in a nutshell, explains existence. What is existence? Consciousness, right? So existence, consciousness, bliss. What is bliss? Bliss also is consciousness, because this bliss or this state of absolute happiness or this presence of consciousness remains as it is and is our true partner. It is the consciousness that is witnessing this world of images through this so-called individuality, and the individuality too being none other than the presence of that consciousness only. So, without going any further, that's a brief explanation of existence, consciousness, bliss. I'll hand it to Amarji, Amar Sood, who is conducting our spiritual meeting for today. Amarji?
Uh, Thank you, Anilji, for this wonderful introduction. I really am at loss at words now what to say because you have explained it so clearly and so well. But I'll still make an attempt because I've been given this duty to speak for next 30 to 40 minutes on this topic of existence, consciousness, and bliss. And Anilji and also my other friends who are present here today, if you vaguely remember last year when we met at Anilji's place, I had made a small, presentation on the topic of this existence, consciousness, and bliss. And after that, Anilji, after a few days, he asked me to work on it and probably make it as a topic to be discussed in this meeting for today. So Anilji, thank you once again. And not taking enough time, I think you already have heard from Anilji about this, existence, consciousness, and bliss. I will be requesting Rajivji, who is helping us, to go to the next slide so that we can start having a bit of, a look at this. So as usual, I start with my prayers, and which is Om Vishwani Deva Savita Dhrutani Parasuva Yad Badram Tan Asuba. The creator of the universe and the giver of the happiness, keep us far from bad habits, bad deeds, and calamities. May we all, may we attain everything that is auspicious. Thank you, Rajivji. A topic, as Anil said, Rajivji will move to the next slide, is existence, consciousness, and bliss. And Anilji also explained that what it means. I just want to take you back to a bit of background in our scriptures, and we call them as great or statements, or they're called Mahavakyas. And these four Mahavakyas, as you can see them, Pragyanam Brahma, Aham Brahma Asmi, Tat Tvam Asi, and I am Atma Brahma. Basically, it is revolving around explaining that ultimate reality, which is explained here by the word Brahman, or Brahma we call it. So say consciousness itself is Brahman. I'm also that consciousness. That's why it says I'm Brahman. Or you are also that consciousness or Brahman. And then last but not the least, the self, or we sometimes call as the self within us, is also Brahman. Next slide, please. And this Brahman, as you probably would have heard, in English we call it Brahman, and in Sanskrit it's called Brahm, not Brahma. That becomes a noun. So this is ultimate reality we talk, and it is that is uncreated, eternal, and it is infinite, and the cause, the foundation, the source and goal of all existence. So basically, when we take an example, we talk of the substratum. So in other words, everything what we see in this world or otherwise, the basis of all that is this Brahman. Yes, Ajivji. Now, this Brahman, when we try to define the word Brahman, or we look at its attributes, and when we look at the attributes, another statement which appears in our scriptures is called this Satchidanand, and this appears in a couple of Upanishads, like Taittiriya Upanishad, and there are two more Upanishads where this has been explained as the attributes of that Brahman, which is also it is called Satchit and Anand. And when generally people speak, they combine these three words and they call it as Satchidanand, which basically means existence, consciousness, and bliss. Yes, we'll go to the next slide, Rajiv. Now, it is used also as a mantra, which evokes the bliss of the pure knowledge and consciousness. So what is interesting here is the Sat here, the word which stands for truth, which I'm going to show you in a minute, we are also using another word for it, which is called knowledge. And of course, and knowledge, and then we say chit, which is consciousness. So this knowledge and consciousness combined leads us to this ananda, or which is called bliss. So that's what we are going to look at, these three aspects or three attributes. And I think they are quite practical if we look at it, what Ramana Maharishi has been telling us with this simple statement of who am I. And the purpose of today's presentation would be, once we have looked at in detail the meaning of these three words, and then we'll try to relate it with what Ramana Maharishi has been talking about in terms of who am I. And that's where we will conclude our presentation. So we'll move to the next slide. And as you can see, the first part of this existence, consciousness, and bliss is called, the first part is called existence, or we call it as Sat. As those who are a little even familiar with the Sanskrit or with Hindi, they know that the Sat also is used for the word truth, or absolute or pure reality. So here, although we use the word existence, but in our Sanskrit, as you know, one single word can have more than one definition. So here, Sat definitely relates to the truth or to the knowledge. So it represents, as I said earlier, eternal and everlasting, which never changes, and that is our spiritual presence. We probably have heard of this famous mantra called Astoma Sadgamya, which stands for lead us or guide us from ignorance to knowledge. So this word Sat now is also can be, we can talk about it as knowledge, and knowledge in different so-called religious practices all around the world for ages is represented by light or by fire. And that's why you find in Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, and Buddhism, the light plays a very important role. That's why we light a lamp. And the lamp represents that knowledge, which we all want to gain. And we want to get rid of the ignorance, or we want to be enlightened, and we want to know the truth. So I can say the word Sat, now we can easily interchange, or we can substitute it with either truth or absolute reality, or even with knowledge. So it all means one thing, that is what we call as Sat, and that is existing all the time. We'll move to the next slide. And still looking at this aspect of Sat, we do have a lot of misconceptions about this knowledge, and that becomes the cause of our sufferings. And and it also keeps us away from our ultimate experience, which we are trying to explain here in the word of Ananda, or the bliss. So these misconceptions or ignorance, I can use the word, and they are built into us once we are born in this world. We are born with our experiences from the past lives, and also that forms our habits. And because of that, we tend to give importance, or we start to look at things which are unreal as real. So we look at that, what are those 4 areas or 5 areas which is probably creating us or keeping us away from this our experience of ultimate reality. Next slide, please. So the first part of knowledge, as I mentioned, or we call it as knowledge or the truth, it is not ignorance. When we say it is not ignorance, means we need to differentiate between what is real and what is unreal. And when we look for what is eternal and what is transient. And I remember recently listening to Sadhguru, and in one of the presentation he said, we think of positions and possessions in this life. And he says, when you leave this world, there's no container service. In other words, you don't carry anything with yourself. Whereas we work all our lives in collecting these possessions, and then we think that they all belong to us. And once you leave, you know that they are not going to go with us. Well, this is the physical aspect. And when we look at our what you call subtle body, when we look at, apart from our senses, we look at our mind, we look at our intellect, we look at our ego. All these things are also insentient or inanimate. In other words, they have no existence of their own, except they are supported by the awareness, or we call it as Atman. So they have no entity whatsoever, but we relate to them because we are in this body and we think they are all are real. And I remember a very interesting story from Socrates. Once he was leading his life, and the king said, "Oh, let me help this poor man because he doesn't look after himself." So he sent him some expensive gems, and he said, "Give it to Socrates." And he straight away refused. He says, "I have nothing to do with them. They are just stones, and they mean nothing to me." And probably the king thought maybe this person doesn't understand the importance or the value of these gemstones. Then he sent him some silk. And when he saw the silk, he said, "The king has sent this silk for you so that you can wear some nice clothes." And he says, "I don't need this silk because it is just made by some silkworms, and I don't need them." So this kind of detachment we do talk about all the time, but this ignorance which stays with us all our lives, and we relate ourselves with the body, and then of course with the sense organs, and then also with our subtle body, is probably the biggest ignorance we all live. And we do understand, it is not that conceptually we do not understand, but when it comes to our day-to-day living, it is so difficult to be away from them. It is like having a magnetic field around your body, and you're automatically start relating to these things, and then you think that they all are going to be there with you, including your body. The next aspect of knowledge which we need to look at is that we always think the I amness, which basically means that we are talking about the ego here. So we have our body has got this sphere of influence because of our senses and our physical body. We find it very hard to separate I from my. So wherever we use the word my, it is all transient, and we know that it's not going to go with us, but we do relate with this all the time. So when we say it is my body or my possessions or my position, and on top of that, we put the word I with it, it means I'm the owner of this. That is another part of ignorance, or another issue which keeps us away because we are not focusing on the truth. And a very interesting story I also read about this I think few weeks back. A man who could carve some sculptures. A priest wanted the services of a sculpture, and he called him. He said, "Can you make some images or deities for the temple?" And the sculptor said, "Yes, I will do it for you." And the priest said, "I can see the future. And would you like to know your future?" He said, "Yeah, why not?" And the sculptor showed his palm to the priest, and the priest said, "Oh, I can clearly see that you're going to die in 3 months, and I can tell you the time." And the sculptor was very upset, and he said, "Since you are the priest and you can see my future, can you tell me how can I evade or avoid this, coming event?" He said, "It's very simple. You are a sculptor. You make two sculptures which look like you. And when the time comes for you to leave this body, and when the god of death comes, you stand in the middle of that. And when he comes around, stop breathing for a while and just stay there, and you will see what happens." And he just followed the instructions given by the priest. So the god of death came and was perplexed, confused, didn't know what to do, and he left. And this man was very happy. He said, "I have now evaded my death." And the god of death went back, or rather, the messenger of death went back to the god. He said, "Why have you come back?" He says, "There were three similar persons. I didn't know which one to bring." He said, "It's very easy to find out who's the person you need to bring." And he said something in his ears, and the messenger said, "Next time you go, make sure that you follow my instructions." So the sculptor was very happy, and he went to the priest and said, "Thank you very much." But the priest said, "Look, you could avoid your death this time, but again, after 3 months, the same event is going to happen. And it's already written for you, and I can again tell you the time and everything else." He said, "Oh my God, what I need to do?" He said, "Just do the same thing. When they come, do exactly what you did last time." And of course, the same thing happened, but this time the messenger of God was very, very trained, and very much was, he knew what to do. So when he came near these statues, and he started praising those statues, and in the end he said, I do not know who is that great sculptor who has done this. And this man couldn't resist. He said, I made them. He said, I know who to carry now. So this is what I'm giving a simple example. We do not say I, but it is there all the time. I'm just talking, I'm aware of that. And when I do something better than others, the ego straight away, it pops up. Look, I can do it. So this is something which is probably one of the biggest, what do you call, say, obstacles in our understanding of the knowledge or the truth, and that probably becomes one of the biggest hurdles. So this separation of I and my is something is a very big, I can say task, but I think we need to practice, and hopefully it will take us there. The third, sorry, I'm still there, Rajivji. The third, issue we have with our ignorance is we have attachments and aversions or repulsions. As you probably would have seen that we have likes and dislikes. Of course, as per Hindu philosophy, they said you're born with these attachments and detachments. So you have this likes and dislikes, and then you do it every time, or you start liking them, and that becomes your habit. And once they become your habits, then they become your tendencies, and you automatically attracted to them. And to get out of them, again, Ramana Maharishi says something very interesting. He says, do not try to stop your karma. Do not try to think about your tendencies or your aversions and dislikes. He says, go to the root cause. And once you go to the root cause, it is just, they all will vanish. They all will stop. It's like you have a tap and the water is flowing through the tap. You go at the back of the tap and you close from there. The water will certainly flow as much water is there in the tap. And after that, the tap would stop. So this is another problem we have in understanding the truth, is that we, because of our likes and dislikes. And last, in this slide, we have this very interesting aspect is about the fear of life and death. We all know that we are born, and whatever is born has to die. But a very interesting story, probably many of you would have heard about a dialogue between Yudhishthira and Yaksha in Mahabharata, where Yudhishthira tells Yaksha, the most amazing thing in this world is that we see people dying every day, and we never ever imagine that we are going to die one day. So that's the biggest paradox of life. And that's what is another reason that we stay away from the truth. And when we stay away from the truth, it becomes difficult for us to find out the real truth or the real knowledge. So these are the 4 areas which, if we can work on, probably it will take us to the next level. Rajivji will go to the next slide. So the truth is beyond our physical and subtle realms of existence. So whatever truth we see with our body, with our physical and mental body, this truth is beyond that. That's what we are talking. And it is attained through contemplation and through right knowledge. Next slide, Rajivji. And as mentioned very clearly, that uninterrupted practice of discrimination between real and unreal, that's what we were just talking, true or untrue, real or unreal, is a means of liberation and the cessation of ignorance. So we are trying to remove ignorance once we use the power of discrimination, and we can differentiate between these two. And on top of that, we can practice it in our day-to-day life. Yes, please. So the knowledge of this sat or truth is comprehended by discrimination, as we mentioned, and it will lead to detachment, and this detachment would lead to the experience of the truth. As Ramana Maharishi says, that no one can succeed without this effort. So we do have to make this effort to shed away these ignorances or so-called these practices we have in our day-to-day life, where we think what is unreal as real, that like our body or our mind or our possessions or positions. So all these things we need to remind ourselves all the time that these all are transient and they are not going to be with us forever. So we can look them as a witness, and we can laugh at them, and we can laugh at ourselves, and we can say that this is not to be taken seriously. It will come and go, so why bother? Next slide. So after this understanding the first part of existence, which I have just now explained with the best of my understanding about having the right knowledge, we go to the next part, which talks about chit. And here, chit is also called consciousness, or we can also use the word awareness, because I've seen Anilji using this word quite a lot. He talks about awareness all the time. So it makes us aware of our true existence. And it is also used because in Sanskrit, as I mentioned, one word can have more than one usage and different meanings. It is also used for the word memory, and that refers to the subconscious mind. So for the subconscious mind also, we use the word chit, but here in this context, we are using the word chit for awareness or for consciousness. So this awareness, it makes us aware of our true existence. And as I said, is used also for memory. Next slide. Now, as we all know that we have different levels of awareness. One is when we are awake, and that is our physical awareness. We are aware of our body and surroundings. And then we have a certain level of awareness, which we have in dream and also in deep sleep. That is also awareness. And the ultimate awareness, which is called Turiya, or the fourth state, is the awareness we are talking in when we use the word Chit. So Chit is talking about the fourth state of awareness. So definitely it is experienced by the seeker, but it is not when he's awake or when he's dreaming or he's in deep sleep. When we cross over these three states, the fourth state which is achieved is called Chit, or is called awareness. And that's what I think is the practice of towards our realization. Next, please. So when we use the word awareness, and we can say that it is, like Ramana Maharishi says, it is a stillness. It is in the present moment, right now. It is also in silence. It is now and it is happening. So in other words, Chit represents the present moment and your presence there. And that awareness, which is away, as I mentioned, from awake, dream, and deep sleep states. Next slide. So basically, we can once again say that Chit means it all relates to the practice of this awareness. And when we talk of the practice of this awareness, all the time we will see that Ramana Maharishi gives us a lot of examples of how to get into this practice, and he uses the word, the standard phrase of "Who am I?" and then going into the root cause, and then having this experience of so-called awareness. Next slide. So a simple, what I can put it in few words is we have seen this awareness that arises from paying attention to the present moment on purpose and without judgment. And this is what we are saying in regards to the practice of this awareness. And probably some of you would have heard about mindfulness. That is also one of the practices which is used these days. So I can very strongly relate mindfulness as one of the aspects of this practice of awareness. Mindfulness certainly focuses on what we see on the screen right now, but I think mindfulness, if it is supported by the knowledge of real and difference between real and unreal, permanent and impermanent, probably would lead to the fourth stage of awareness, which is called Turiya. Next slide, please. So this awareness, it leads us to the ultimate reality, which is also called self-realization, and it connects us with what we already have or what is within. And that's what I think we are always searching for. as we said that we already have it. Only thing is we do not know how to connect. It's like looking for something in a room which is full of darkness, but it is already there. And if you have know how to find that place, and once you connect to that place, it is already with you. So that's what the practice is all about. And of course, the prerequisite, as mentioned in the Sat, is to not to have any ignorance or not to have give importance to what is not important. Next slide. And in this case of consciousness, Ramana Maharshi very clearly says that you have to make a deliberate effort to attain this effortless state of stillness. So this deliberate effort is very important. In other words, I know that what I'm looking for is in this room. Probably you have heard this, a small anecdote. Somebody was looking for money he lost on the street. And people asked him that, did you lose it here? He said, no, I lost it in my house. He said, then why are you looking it here? You should go back to your house and look for your money there. And that's what we have seen, that what we need to find out about ourselves is within us. And for that, we have to make this effort so that we can find what is already with us. Now we'll go to the next part, or the third part, which is on bliss. And as bliss is called Anand or Ananda, as we write in English, it is a state of absolute happiness. Now, the word absolute happiness is not a great word to use, I would say, because it has nothing to do with happiness and it has nothing to do with absolute. But we have to use words, and we all know that languages are not perfect anytime. And we try to use words to express, and we try to get near to the real experience. And I'm sure Energy and others, those who have experienced this, they will understand these words probably are not that significant, but we use them because just we want to express something. So I'm using this word that it means absolute happiness, or it is a state of unity and wholeness. So unity and wholeness is a very interesting concept here, which basically means that we are united not with ourselves, but with everyone else around us. And we regard them as one in all, or all in one. So that awareness comes once you have achieved this state of happiness. And then it is also called self-absorption, which means basically that you have found yourself within yourself. And when that happens, it is a state of bliss or ananda. Next slide. So this nature of ananda is different from our experiences gained through our physical existence. So experiences we have in our physical body or in our mental body are not the experience we are talking here about, the bliss. But one thing is for sure, the process or the ladder or the bridge which takes us to this experience is our mind only. When mind, as Ramana Maharshi says, when it starts looking inwards and focuses there and find the cause of all the thoughts, and when all the thoughts are dropped, it straight away takes us to the next level, or we cross the bridge with the help of the mind, and that is where we go to the fourth stage. So definitely it is helpful, the mind is helpful. At the same time, what we experience in our day-to-day life, whether we keep our eyes closed or open, that probably is not the happiness we are talking here. Like eating good food or listening to good music, that of course gives us joy, but that is not the joy we are talking here. Next slide, please. So it is a state of ultimate proximity to absolute reality. So absolute reality means our own self, and it also means self-realization. So there are a lot of words are used for this, and people call it. I'll show in the next slide. We'll see that some more words will come, and it also means connected to the deeper self within. So again, we are playing with words, So basically, we know that it is within ourselves, and we have to cross that bridge with the help of our mind and have that experience. And we can come back and can talk about that experience, or we stay in that experience and life goes on as normal. Next slide, please. So it is also called in different religious practices like nirvana, they use the word in Buddhism, and in Vedic literature, it is called apavarga, which basically means bliss or liberation. So I'm just using few words to explain that the same concept does appear under different used by different religions or by different followers of different schools of thoughts. Let's go now to the next slide. And as Ramana says, if once the mind finds its inner happiness, it will not wander. So this is the inner happiness we are looking at. It is like finding ourselves. And once we find ourselves, we have nothing else to look at. And the life goes on. And you have in that, you can say that's the sphere of, tranquility, stillness, or peace within peace, whatever words you can use. I'm at loss with words, but you probably are. Hopefully, you're getting the message that it is something which only you know once you have it. Otherwise, it is only words. Next slide. Now, we have heard this statement all the time about who am I, which is asked, which is I think very much is the characteristic of the way Ramana Maharishi talks about finding ourselves. So when we talk the word who, it means the interpretation I've given here for the purpose of this presentation is I'm looking for something. So can I say it is an expression to know something which I do not know, or something I know something, or I may not know anything. So when I say who is this, so it is definitely a question. And what is this when we say? So it's a question mark, and it's about the search. So the search starts with the word who. And when I go to the next word, am, and as in English, as you understand, it's a present tense, which basically means the state of being, present, now, happening. So it's the present state. So who am I? And I stands for it stands for the ultimate reality, which is which we cover in this big statement. So I'm trying to find out myself. So once I find out myself, I know who am I. So who am I? And Satchitanand, I'm going to relate and I'm going to show you. And when I was looking at literature, what we see, whatever Ramana Maharishi has explained in different forms and different ways, depending on the seeker, depending on the questions, I'm in a very, you can say, simple way, trying to put into three groups or three categories, and they can fall into the categories of who, am, and I. And the first, who, I will relate to Sat, or the knowledge. So basically, who means I'm looking for knowledge. What is this? When I say the word the user, it doesn't mean the word only who, it means what also, where, and all that questions we have. And that's how you start to search for the knowledge. Like we discussed the word Sat before, that Sat means knowledge. So we try to find that knowledge. And when we try to find that knowledge, that is what the word who means. I'm going to take some examples now of the statements made by Ramana Maharishi to just impress upon what this word who means. Next slide, please. And this slide talks about, in this slide, I'm not going to read the whole slide, but he talks about the mind. He says, seek the mind, find out about your mind, find out about your thoughts, find out about your ego. And when you find out about ego, then you will go to the root cause. So it is all about the knowledge. So this is one slide I collected to just explain a bit on who, or what I call it, Sat, or knowledge. Let's go to the next slide, which is also again on the same, on the knowledge aspect. And here it says clearly, Ramana Maharishi says that as long as you are the doer, you are the one who will pick up the tab or the bill. If you drop this doership, which means I did it, I am the person, or I drop the ego, then your law of karma would end and you will move to the next step of having the experience. So this again is the knowledge which is given to us. I will put under the, under the first category when we see who am I, or the Sat. Let's go to the next slide, which is again on the same topic. Here it says that to inquire who am I really means trying to find out the source of ego. So I think it's a very powerful statement, at least for me. When we say we can find the source of ego, I think it's a great knowledge to have and then to work on it. So as I've just explained, these three statements given by Ramana Maharishi talks about the knowledge aspect of Satchitanand, which is the first part, and I relate that with who. Let's go to the second part, which is am, and that I'm going to relate that with chit, which basically means awareness or consciousness. So for awareness and consciousness, Ramana Maharishi very clearly says, live always in the present, and there is no past or future except in the mind. So if you drop the mind, what is there is only the present, and the experience starts from there. So this definitely relates to am or to the chit, as we call it as awareness. Next slide again is on the same chit, and here very simply the Rishi says, just be quiet, be still, and that is what the experience is all about, and that is what the awareness is. And we go to the third slide now. Here again, the Rishi says, in that state, there's being alone. There's no you, nor I, but no present, past, or future. It is beyond time and space. So this expression of am, because when I say be still and be in the present, I'm still talking from the body and the mental level. And Rishi says, when you practice on this present or on this consciousness, you'll go away, you'll move away from time and space. And that's what the experience of the awareness is all about. Let's go to the last part of this segment, which is on Anand or the bliss. Very clearly, the Rishi says, it is one's true self. Once when the self is known, there is neither birth or death, and what is eternal being, consciousness or bliss. So once it is known, what is there is only bliss. Then we have the second slide again on the same this. Here it talks about once this happens, you are calm and composed. You have no worries. You have no anxieties, and you have no cares, and you are just in that state. And once you are in that state, you have nothing to explain, nothing to do, and you stay the way you are. Moving to the next slide on this one. Here, I'm not going to read the whole slide, but I'll just highlight. It says that there are no longer, a person can still carry on with ordinary day-to-day business, but he no longer identifies himself with the activities, but watches them like a dreamer watching a dream. There is no more to do, no more to be attained. And this is the supreme state of absolute bliss. But in the simple words of Rishi, it is a self, and it can be realized by one and all by self-inquiry. So this is what I have related. Let's go to the next slide, Rajivji. And so I will probably conclude here by saying, who am I is nothing else but Sat Chit and Anand. So when we talk of Sat Chit and Anand, we are talking about the knowledge, we are talking about the practice or having experience of awareness, and then which leads us to this state of bliss. Moving forward, and I will just put the definition of the Satchit Anand given by Ramana Rishi in one of the searches I did on Moodle, on Google. It says it is a state of effortless, ever alert peace. Effortlessness while remaining aware is the state of bliss, and that is realization. So I think there cannot be more beautiful words than this to explain Sat, Chit, and Anand. And we'll move, I think we're about to conclude this. I will probably have two more slides. And it says, so what is moksha, or what is self-realization, or what is bliss? And the Rishi says, get rid of the non-existent misery and attaining the bliss, which is always there. So bliss is always there. All we have to do is to look for what we are looking for in this dark room, which is within us. And once we find it, we go to the next slide. And here it says, awareness of the self is deathlessness, silence, and once it is achieved, there is no then waking, dreaming, or sleep state. All these are known by different names, but it is the fourth stage, what Rishi talks in his own words. And that's where I will probably conclude my presentation today. And thank you once again, and thank you to all of you for listening to me. I hope you will be able to contribute a bit more after this. And as Anilji requested, Neeruji to say a few words on this. Then I will ask Anilji to take over and please take it forward for discussions if required. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amarji. That was very beautifully presented. A lot of work it looks like has gone into what you put together today. Hope it will be useful to everyone listening. Neeruji, would you please like to conclude?
Yes. Salutations to Sage Ramana, Rishi Master Biansa Duno, and all the past, present, and future sages. Namaste to all beings present in the satsang. Today's topic, existence, consciousness, bliss, is the essence of Sage Ramana's teachings and was very well explained by Amarji through an extensive review of scriptures presented in an engaging way. In concluding the talk, we recognize that the nature of self is existence, consciousness, bliss. And that is what we essentially are. Existence means what truly exists. What is Sat? It means what in us never ends. The talk today by Amarji points to ask this question: what really exists in us? What is the essence of the body-mind setup? See, this body is mortal. It is time-bound, and it comes to an end when the term on the earthly plane finishes. So the body does not really exist. Mind is a cluster of thought, feeling, perceptions, which are constantly forming and dissolving. So mind also does not have an existence in real terms. Moreover, when we go into deep sleep, we do not perceive the thoughts, feelings. So where does the mind go? It is experienced in the waking and dream states, but not in deep sleep. So mind does not truly exist. So the question is, what exists in real terms? The best we can say, based on our findings, is that only existence truly exists. What we mean by that? Existence is the truth, Sat. The existence does not depend on any shape. For example, if we look at a table right now in front of most of us, because we are watching this. So a table exists till the moment it is kept in some house, in some office, or in a furniture store. When the table is no more useful, we send it to recycling. Its term ends, but look carefully. The table has ended, but has the existence also ended? No. The existence remains in the form of the recycled material. The existence is present in the form of countless entities, humans, organisms. The existence is the essential nature, and it is called the natural beingness, or the self, present as life and matter in every entity. Next, the other side of existence is consciousness. Consciousness means the knowing which is present in an entity about its existence. It is the knowledge of the existence. It is the knowing of our being. Because, everybody knows that they exist. It is consciousness at the very base level of what we are. But see, normally in hustle and bustle of our lives, are we even aware of that underlying consciousness of our being? For example, in our professional life, we are conscious of the work we've got to complete. In our personal lives, we are conscious of our relationships. At an individual level, we are conscious of our interests and ambitions. All these objects, such as work, relationships, habits, are external objects. We may be conscious of some subtle objects in our internal environment, such as our thoughts, our feelings, but look carefully. As we are conscious of these external and internal objects, are we equally conscious of the underlying consciousness with which we become conscious of these external or internal objects? Thus, we need to grasp one very deep aspect of consciousness. Although every entity is conscious, the consciousness is not present as like a fixed something given. What an entity is conscious of depends on their spiritual evolution. For example, a plant is conscious but much lesser than a human. A bird has a higher level of consciousness than a plant. A spiritually awakened individual will have a higher level of consciousness compared to an unawakened individual. Normally, in the beginning of one's spiritual quest, one is conscious of the physical body. They are conscious of the thoughts, emotions, memory, habits, likes, and dislikes. So, as we advance, we become conscious of our inner being or our true self. What do we know ourselves as? In saying that, I don't mean what do we intellectually know ourselves as? We intuitively know, this is the question, what we intuitively know ourselves as. The intuitive knowing means knowing without thought. What we know, what we are. Just like we know without thinking that there is a body. We are conscious of its existence, bodily existence. Existence consciousness. This means we are conscious of our existence in its natural sense, irrespective of the bodily existence, independent of our thoughts, emotions, perceptions, sensations. That would mean, let's imagine the ego personality does not exist. Then what kind of knowing we will have of ourselves? That is existence consciousness. Then, so in that state, that's the natural state, means knowing what we essentially are. Sometimes they say natural being means I am. Natural doesn't mean I am this or I am that. Natural being is untouched by this or that. This or that applies to ego personality. Also, being conscious of I am, it doesn't imply a thought of I am. In the natural state of existence, there is no trace of thought. Existence consciousness is a limitless existence. That will be like the ever-present space in which the thoughts appear, through which they flow, and with which they become known. You knowingly be that consciousness instead of being the thought and feelings bound consciousness, like an individual. So just be as an open, allowing space, letting the thoughts and feelings to flow as they are. So finally, we come to the bliss. So bliss is the joy arising in the natural beingness. The knowing of our being, it's a peace in its own. And to know oneself, what one truly is, it's a joy itself. So we abide as self. We are aware of the agitating thoughts and the rebellious mind, but we are without the belief that mind truly exists, right? So if we have a true understanding of this principle, existence, consciousness, bliss, then body does not exist, mind will not exist, then mind will not torture us, it will not attack us in the way when we believe that mind exists or the body exists. So then the mind cannot stand. So what we can do is say to the thoughts that you are truly welcome inside me, but see, I am staying as existence, consciousness, and bliss. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Neeruji. Well presented. Just to open up the forum, would anyone else like to contribute to the discussion today?
So I wanted to thank Amarji and Niruji. They have very beautifully explained today's subject of Sat Chit Ananda, showed the very technical terms. If anything that I would like to add would be to say that this is the closest or the nearest we can reach to describe the absolute reality. In our normal course of life, we have two things. One is name and a form. And there is characteristics and qualities, attributes. There are so many things attached to this name and form that we have. Like this form is called Damodran, Anilji, Amar, and so on. But to know the reality, to know the absolute essence of our being, ourself, the only closest way, or truly according to the Shastras, the best name that can be given to that absolute reality is this Sat, this Chit, and this Anandam. So it is like the two sides of the coin. One side, we are given this attribute of Sat, Chit, and Ananda, and the other side is that which actually is our true nature, which appears only. So the word here I'm using is appears in the very dynamic, subtle form of Sat Chitananda. It is only through this that we reach, that we know, or that we become one with our true self. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Damodaranji. Amarji, you want to say something, Amarji?
Thank you, Anilji, and I think very well the views given by Damodaranji and Niruji, much appreciated. And I think the clarity with which it has been explained by everyone here, really, I think it has served the purpose of my presentation, that I feel very close to what was said by Niruji and as well as by Damodaranji. And also, Anilji, thank you. And I want to just say that we pray and hope that we get closer and closer to reality, and then we start living in it. And that's I hope and pray for everyone. Thank you.
Okay. So thanks to everyone for joining today's meeting. So since there's no one else opting to add or contribute or queries, so we'll close our spiritual discussion for today, and we will catch up again next month. We'll just remain online.